I've asked George to give us a few words on what does it mean to have all of your men involved in leading the church versus attending the church. Guys, it's for me, it's all about investing in the church, investing in your family. And these guys do that. So I've asked George if he would share a little bit about how they do it. And guys, these guys made a 4-hour drive on a bus to come here to be with you, and we'll take the 4-hour bus ride back. Many of these guys have sacrificed a day's work. So guys, without further ado, George Caragol from...
Thank you. Yeah, I guess one of the things that we wanted to try to let you guys see is to try to look into the lens of what is a man ministry, you know? What is it that we do, and how is it that we do it down in Miami? It's a very hard place. Let me start off by saying thank you, Daryl, for the opportunity to be able to be here. Thank you to the MCMM organization. Congratulations on the last 20 years. And we know that God is going to give you guys greater influence in the next 20 that we still have to come. You know, one of the questions that we have on our shirt, and it has to do with our ministry, has a big question, which is, what is a man? And a lot of times, you know, people are looking at us weird, like saying they want to know the answer to it, but we always say, man, if this thing said, what is a cat or what is a dog, nobody would have any problems with the shirt. But due to the fact that it says, what is a man, it kind of drives people insane. So we had this girl at the airport, she was like dying to say it, and we're like, so what is it? What is it? She's like, he's a dog. And we're like, wow. And it only shows that it depends on who you ask. There's so many different definitions to the word, what is a man? To some people, it's the guy who abandoned them at 3 years old. To another guy, he sexually abused them. Or a girl that used to be raped. Or a guy who used to be an alcoholic. And there's just so many distorted, real, answers of what a man truly is. But we know that God created man to be a champion. And we know that because when we look at Genesis 1:26, where God is speaking to the spirit of man, and he says, let us make man in our image and in our likeness. We know in 1 Colossians 15, we see that Jesus says that I am the image of the invisible God. So we see that God is addressing the spirit of man. And that's something that we do at a very strong basis in our ministry. We don't cater to the emotions or to the feelings of the men in our group. We're constantly dealing with the spiritual aspect of it because we know that is what directs the feelings and the emotions. Plus, we know that as men, God has called us to deny ourselves, to take up our cross daily, and to walk with him. And that is going to cause you to have to deny yourself. It's going to cause you to have to not want to do the things that your desires to do. We also know that in Galatians, God says, in Galatians 1:15, he says, but when it pleased God who separated me from my mother's womb. So we understand that every single one of the men in our ministry and in your ministries, it pleased God to separate them from their mother's womb, to call them aside and call them pastors, to call them evangelists, to call them the next men's ministry leaders of planet Earth. We know that as we look at the topic of men's ministry, we like to say that our job is to perfect. I wrote it here, give me a second. It says it's the perfecting of the character of Christ in your men. See, I believe that if we can perfect that character in them, create that mold, create a modeling aspect of Jesus Christ, they will be your greatest evangelist tool. You won't have to be trying to create barbecues, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I believe that these men will be in the workplace, they'll be in their neighborhoods, and what will be overflowing from their cup will be so contagious. That's what happened in my life. I met Pastor Joaquin Molina 6 years ago, and that one day he was able to impart into me the spirit from a father into a son. That day I went to my house and my wife told me, I think you're crazy because the words that you're saying, you don't say those words. And I didn't know that I was already speaking like a son. A lot of people ask us that question. So what's the secret to your men's ministry? And there is no secret. It's an impartation. I believe that the fathers, that the leaders that are here, God has called you men to not only lead, but really to lead with the examples of being fathers. because we need to raise sons. If we're not raising sons, once you guys leave the ministry, who's going to take over? See, God created sons so that he can give them his inheritance to his sons and his daughters. And how do you do that? You do that by being a father, filling yourself up with the Spirit of God, because we know that God is the perfect Father. And we see that when we look at the life of Jesus, when he says in John 10:30, he says, me and the Father are one. You guys are to be building sons that are just like you, that walk like you, that talk like you, that act like you. And you do that spiritually. You do that by an impartation of the Son, from the Father to the Son. You know how else you do that? By hanging out with them, by letting them into your life. You know, when I came in, I told Pastor, listen, I don't know how to be a man. I don't know how to be a husband. I definitely don't know how to be a father. I'm 34 years old, and you got a lot of work to do. He says, don't worry about it. I'm going to show you how to do this. If I make a right, you make a right. If I make a left, you make a left. He says, I'm going to show you how to do your finances. I'm going to teach you how I speak to my children. I'm going to teach you how I speak to my wife. I'm going to show you the way I act in a heated area. I said, I could do that. I said, you know what? Even greater than that, I'm going to do what you tell me to do, whether I like it or not. You see, I started to notice that if I wasn't going to be obedient and if I was never going to listen to anybody, I wasn't going to get anywhere. So I decided that day to make a decision. My decision was I was going to do what this man told me to do, whether I liked it or not. From there, my drug addictions got canceled. My pornography addiction, 17 years of cocaine, canceled in one day because the Spirit of God came upon me. See, that day, the truth set me free. A lot of times we're trying to figure out the most creative way to lower ourselves down to culture, and all we're doing is watering down the word. Do you know what? My pastor doesn't have any tattoos. I got 5 of them. He's never cheated on his wife. He's never done drugs. He's never done alcohol, never cheated on his taxes. He's never been like I was, a scumbag. But he was able to come to me with the truth, and that day the truth set me free. So I believe that the power is in us keeping the truth and not watering down what we're doing. And you know what? And stop catering to the feelings and the emotions of these men. I believe when you look at the life of David, the wars that they were fighting is like Walt Disney World compared to the battles that we're in right now. I believe the battles that we're in right now, because the Bible says it, you're not fighting against flesh and blood anymore. It's principalities. Everything's happening in a dark realm. The whole world is going to hell in a wastebasket, and none of us are catching on to it. We need to be strategizing with our men and preparing them to fight these spiritual battles so that our neighbors could be touched, so that our families could be healed, so that our children will have a desire and a passion to be the men that God has called us to be. You know, I see a lot of, there's a lot of advertising going around for the millennials. And I say, Lord, what has happened in the last 20 years that we've allowed a generation to come upon planet Earth that dislikes, or better yet says, most of them hate their parents and don't want anything to do with God. And then when you outreach to them, they want you to suffer so that they can be happy. That's Antichrist. That's not the Spirit of God. The Spirit of God is that you would come and you would deny yourself. Because God already did it all on the cross. Jesus Christ, 2,000 years ago, got on the cross and gave it all up for us. So that's already been done. And I understand that we got to figure out how we minister to these guys. But what I'm saying is in the next 20 years, now we got to build a generation that's going to be able to clean up what they did, and a generation that loves and that is willing to die for Jesus Christ. And it's only going to happen if the men that God has set upon this nation, which are in this room, are going to be willing to walk and model Jesus Christ for them. Because these guys are like Thomas. Thomas he saw all the miracles, saw all the wonders that Jesus did. And he still said, if I don't touch, I'm not going to believe. And I believe this is the generation that we're at. These guys are asking, they want to touch. They want to see Jesus in you. They want to see you walk like Jesus. They want to see you talk like Jesus. And hey, we know we're not perfect, but let's be real. Let's give these guys an opportunity to walk with us, open up our lives. I tell my men, I'm the head usher in my church, I said, listen, if you guys don't open up your lives to your men, how can you expect them to progress? How are they going to grow? How are they going to be able to go to the next level? And I believe this is what men's ministry is in Miami. It's a place where we're teaching our men how to fight the battles of the Lord, how to really be men that are full of integrity, of transparency, the ability to open up and ask God to heal them and heal their families. I'm out of time, so I want to just give you guys the thank you for the opportunity to share to you guys. This is I guess a short 15 minutes of what a man, what is a man. The book is something that the pastor wrote from a passion, that a birth that came in him 30 years ago, to make sure that every man would have an opportunity to be able to walk and be like Jesus upon the earth, and to have a model. Behavior is modeled after. If we can't create models so that people can model after, then we can't expect our youth to follow us, or our children, or our churches. Thank you.